It's interesting. I feel like there's such a need for God in schools. But to be quite honest, I feel like God is at the door knocking. But he's not welcome in school. You get that from the policies. It's accepting of everything else but the gospel, except for Jesus, except
Right.
for the message of the Bible. And that's really offensive to people, which, it's supposed to be.
God has been pushed out of the public school system. We put policies in place to combat hate. But when students hear him knock and invite him in, we see God move in ways where the culture changes.
I'm Jeff Eckart.
I'm Jayson Brewer, and this is The Thought Factory.
The Thought Factory podcast is brought to you by Never the Same, cultivating students through biblical discipleship and spiritual disciplines using theology, community, and technology. Learn more at neverthesame.org.
Well, we're glad you're here with us on this episode of The Thought Factory, where we're in this series called Behind Closed Doors on Campus. Last episode, we heard directly from students, and we heard some stories of how schools are changing because of the leadership of what God's doing through high school students. And today, we're going to go back on the inside and hear from some insiders, but we're going to hear from adults today, what their perspective is on what's happening in schools, and hearing from two people in particular. One's a high school principal at an urban high school here in the United States, as well as a person that does a lot of different things. He's a performer, but he also visits public schools and interacts with literally thousands of students on a weekly basis around the country.
And if you are joining us for whatever reason for the first time, we want to encourage you to check out all of the episodes that we've had in the past. We are in our 4th season of the podcast. We started this season out with a series called The Digital Life, where we looked at survival tools to give to students to be able to navigate their digital footprint in this digital world. And so we want to encourage you to check those episodes out because they have a lot of nuggets of information. And when we are dealing with the digital world, it's no doubt that we can't avoid and we can't escape technology. And so Chris McKenna gives us a lot of nuggets of information and insight on being able to navigate and being able to navigate appropriately and teach those tools to students as well.
As always, find us on our Facebook page. When you search Never the Same, you'll find this post of this episode, and you can interact with us, as well as a link to our companion blog, which goes with each episode, which takes you a little deeper informationally. That blog can be found on our website as well, neverthesame.org/blog, so check that out. Jayson, one of the things that we do is we look forward to summer, and we're gearing up to the summer here. We're starting to get closer and closer to that summer break when students are out of school. It's warm everywhere. Things are great. And one of the things that we do in the summer is we travel across the country for NTS Camp, part of our organization. Jayson, you play such an important part in that role because you
drive the truck.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess you do sometimes. You, more importantly than that, though, from getting us to A to B, you oversee all the programming, and Jayson is really the best, in my opinion, as far as programming a student event, and we're second to none with the environments that you created in NTS Camp. And we're not a traditional camp in terms of like more of an outdoor or an environment that's a property where we own. We travel and partner with college campuses, so we're around the country, literally on the road, traveling thousands of miles from place to place, and we're coming to a place near you. We hope that you can follow us, maybe visit us, and hopefully come join us at NTS Camp. So you can learn more at ntscamp.com, and you'll find out where we will be, and maybe, just maybe, if you'd like to visit. We have visitors all the time. Youth Ministry is thinking about checking it out. And Jayson, our camp is different for youth ministries because it really empowers them and equips them. Some of the things that we do to do that is allowing the adult leaders to come for free, as well as some other things.
Sometimes it's difficult to describe what our camp is like when I say that I work for an organization that puts on summer camps and what it really entails. And many people have this concept of camp and kumbaya and sitting around a campfire and you're sitting in the middle of the woods. And we are not like that at all. And I've also been a camp counselor where students would be sent by their parents individually by themselves, and they show up, and then you have these camp counselors. We're not like that as well. We put on an environment, high production, programmed environment for youth ministries where they can bring their entire youth ministry to the camp. And that includes the small group leaders. The small group leaders are able to go for free. We budget out all the money for all the adult leaders from every single church that we partner with to be able to come to our camp, mainly because we want to invest in them. We want to be able to pour into them. We want to train them. But also we know how important it is for their involvement in the students' lives that show up at camp, because it's a discipleship piece. They are able to go through the entire camp experience with the students that they're discipling and then go home and be able to disciple them and continue that relationship. And so we have seen success story after success story of being able to see the adults be right there, present with the students. The student is transformed by the gospel, by the truth, by the presence of God. And then they're going home and they're able to walk alongside an adult leader who cares about them. And we are unique in that way because most camps just have students show up on site, and there's camp counselors that invest in these students, and then those students leave. And then as the years go on, that camp counselor loses relationship or loses touch with that student. But we believe in adult leaders. We believe in youth workers. We are youth workers or former youth workers, and we know how important it is for these youth workers to be invested in. And so that's what we try to do at NTS Camp.
This was birthed in the trenches of youth ministry. Me and a friend back in the year 2000 came up with this idea, started it. A few friends, we got together, brought our youth groups together, and from there it's just grown to be this national camp. But we started with, how can we make this week of camp make our youth ministries better throughout the year? So we provide top-notch training from the greatest minds in youth ministry around the country that are with us, that are training your adults who are there, giving them some time off so you can be with your volunteer staff. So we have churches all the way from 200 to 20,000, literally across the country, all denominations. So check it out. If you're still thinking about an option for this summer, we'd love to talk to you about them and have you join us. So ntscamp.com is the website. So today, we're talking about schools, and just a few days ago as we recorded this, students in Florida are still reeling, especially at Douglas High School, from the shooting that happened. And that's been a game changer. And so as we're talking about students and campus, it's almost like a different day today because of that event. And Jayson, I remember... I think on the last episode you talked about it being the new Columbine, which is sad to think about. But, here we are today still facing all these issues. And what is it really like? What's going on behind closed doors of schools? It's where they're spending half of their waking hours during the school year. So as youth workers, as people thinking about students and equipping and helping them, we need to know what that environment's like. We need to know what that world is like, and that's what we're going to get into today.
In this first segment, we have George Moss, who is a hip-hop artist. He is a friend of ours. He travels the country going into schools and being able to talk to them. And he has an inspirational message, and he tries to just build relationships with these students and get to know them and to pour into them. And so we're going to talk to him right now.
Well, we're really glad to have George Moss with us, a dear friend, known him for a long time, since he was a young man. And your voice is still as deep. Yeah, at
least I try to pretend like
you're still young. You're still young. George does many, many things. Oxen Apparel. He travels. He performs. He speaks. He writes. He does so many different things. And currently, the reason you're here with us today is your involvement in public schools. We've been talking about what's going on behind closed doors at schools. So, George, incredible to have you with us today.
I'm glad to be here. I'm really glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Thanks for going live as well. Hey, everybody.
Shout out to everybody on Instagram watching this. Yep. You won't see it on the podcast.
I will see it because I follow you on Instagram.
Well, thank you.
And speaking of Instagram, we might as well go into the first question, which is
Ooh, segue.
That's the best way to go.
Yeah.
There was something that made you famous on Instagram.
See, yeah.
And when I say famous, I put
quotation marks on the famous.
Yeah.
It's actually more so Facebook than Instagram.
Speaking of Facebook,
yeah, because so a couple of years ago, I got married. We had a new baby boy, and we were nursing him. We, meaning my wife, was nursing him, and she's out on the road with me, and we left him at home for that time with a babysitter, and she's pumping while we're out on the road to give him breast milk. Can I say breast milk on the podcast? Is that?
I guess you can.
I mean,
we'll beep it out later if we feel like if
I
it's
don't think
necessary.
anybody would be offended, but I mean, everyone's offended. by
Unnecessary
things nowadays.
censorship right there.
Just start bleeping stuff for no reason. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just cleaning my wife's breast pumps backstage after I get off stage. I'm still sweaty. I go back to the green room, and my wife she's going to go out to the merchandise table to help out there, and I just needed to clean up. So I'm just silly taking a photo of myself like, hey, this is what rappers do when they get off stage. They clean breast pumps for their wives so the babies can eat. And I did #ThugLife.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Oh, my goodness.
Just being silly. And then, this kind of the internet got a hold of it. And the next day, I'm going up to another show, and somebody calls and was like, hey, they're talking about you on the Today Show. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then I get off the thing, and Facebook just starts blowing up, and apparently the picture just went viral, and now I'm not known for music or for ministry or for anything else. I'm the guy that washed breast pumps in the bathroom. So
after your performance.
That is so funny. I thought that was hilarious. Something to be known for.
Yeah, I guess you got to be known for something. 15 seconds.
Did your heart rate go up when your friend said, hey, you're being mentioned on the Today Show?
I thought he was just mistaken. I just thought I was making a funny joke. I was like, oh man, people really think I'm funny, and not really. It was actually important to people that I did that. So, yeah.
Wow, that's so funny. So you've had a background in working with students. Talk to us a little bit about that and what you're doing now currently.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with students ever since I was a student, doing ministry, doing hip hop music. I tour and I do things, and every so often I've gotten an opportunity to go into public schools. Sometimes with a speaker, like I'll go in, do a couple songs, and the speaker will speak. And just recently, I've taken on the whole thing, going in, sharing some, performing a little bit, and then sharing my story as a speaker to the kids. And it's just been interesting, to say the least. I think I've been doing this for a while now, and the culture has changed drastically in the past, say, 10 years. And culture always shifts, but doing ministry is hard to catch up with that. We don't stay ahead of the curve. We think, oh, this worked this year, we're going to continue to do what works, and people move on from what worked then without updating it to what it does right now. And I think we're in a new generation. We have to approach ministry in a much different way.
What would you describe your role? Would it be more inspirational, more motivational, more like...
Yeah, I just want to inspire kids, really. Yeah. Inspire them to be able to share their story and realize that their story is important and their story is unique. It doesn't have to be like everybody else's. The story that I do have is still important, and it still can. Other kids still need to hear it. Other people still need to hear it. And I realize that a lot of these kids, they don't realize that they're living through their story right now. A lot of the struggles that they're facing, a lot of the problems that they're going through right now, they don't realize that they're going through this to be able to have that experience to relate to somebody else later. But it's hard to see that when you are a 16-year-old and you feel like the world is crashing around you. It's hard to see the light at the end of that tunnel and realize that your story is actually important, and you going through this is much bigger than just yourself. That's what I hope to be able to communicate to kids and be able to see that.
Usually when we do this somewhere in public, one of us has to say it. I'm going to say it. I gave you your first performance show,
You did,
right?
absolutely.
What was the date?
October 2nd, 1999.
Yes.
Opening up for John Rubin.
That's right.
Thank you, man. You gave me my first opportunity to open up for someone. So
I always I'm so proud of all the things you've done over the years. And your ministry to students really shifted, I think, within the last year or so, where you've performed to hundreds of thousands of students, really, and on stage, and you've spoke. And what I love about you is your heart it's what I look for when we look for people for NTS and other events, is people that are real. And it's not a job, it's a passion, it's a love for God. And I just really appreciate that. But your ministry really shifted in the last year from doing not just that, but really going into public schools.
Yeah.
And we had lunch, I don't know, 6 weeks ago. And we
Together?
Together, yeah.
'Cause I had lunch 6 weeks ago.
Same
too.
restaurant.
I don't remember what it was.
Weird.
Same
We were at the
restaurant, same
same table.
Yeah.
Same time.
Man,
We were talking about the things that you are seeing. I mean, you're there in public schools all across the country.
Yeah.
So talk about what you're seeing God do in schools. You talked about some of the changes, shifts in culture, but what are you seeing?
Man, it's interesting. I feel like there's such a need for God in schools. But to be quite honest, I feel like God is at the door knocking. But he's not welcome in school. You get that from the policies and setup, the culture that we're living in a post-Christian society.
Yeah.
That's a popular buzzword, but it truly is what it is. It's accepting of everything else but the gospel, except for Jesus, except
Right.
for the message of the Bible, and that's really offensive to people. Which it's supposed to be. That's what the Bible teaches. It's going to be offensive to those people, to those that don't want to accept that the truths that are found in it. From my perspective, going in, it's great. I've had several different experiences. So sometimes when I go in myself and I'm welcomed in, and people actually ask me to come and be a part of that, it's received really well. But sometimes that they find out that you're a Christian, then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes the demeanor is changed. You're not necessarily welcome. You're watched extremely closely. Like, are they going to say something about Jesus in the talk? And it's mind-boggling to me how you can take a rapper that will talk about drugs, sex, money, cars, killing in their music, and they're welcomed into places sometimes without any sort of hesitation. But you're a Christian. We really should be careful about you. We don't want you to be in here. So
Your message of love is not welcomed here.
right, exactly.
It is such a crazy time, and I mean that's nothing new in history, I guess, with the gospel. But you saying it that way really is eye-opening. That there's this guardedness that people have with schools and the gospel, and I mean, we are living in a new era from last week. The shooting in Florida, we talked about that before we started recording, and the message, the love, the hope, the positivity, what God can do in people's hearts, and we get, the public school arena has its own set of rules. We get that, but boy, since even when we met a few weeks ago for lunch together, Jayson, we were together.
You were together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was at
Ever since then, I mean, like the urgency for me since last week has really ratcheted up with the shooting as we record this, that happened. And boy, these are, if this isn't a wake up call for us to understand as adults that we have to create safe environments and we have to empower these students to take God through the door of the schools. When you said God is knocking, but he's not welcome, what would you say from a student perspective? Is that as much the case?
Yeah, I would definitely say, because it's not just the schools, it's a reflection of our culture. God's not welcome in our media. God's not welcomed on television. He's not welcomed on, award shows. People say Jesus if you are in an interview and she starts talking about that, like somehow they lose signal. It's a perpetual thing, and it's really tough. The sense of urgency that we see that is there is absolutely there. We know that it's there. However, it's like they don't want the solution. It's just a really tough issue to really, to have something that could help this issue. You're not going to create safety in a public school without changing the hearts of people.
Yeah.
The gospel is something that changes the heart of me. We're not trying to change behavior. And I think for so long, people look at Christianity as like, I'm trying to change your behavior. And God is not concerned about your behavior as much as he's concerned about your heart. Because if your heart changes, then you don't go into a school and shoot it up. But at the same time, when your heart changes, you're not bullying the kid to make him go to that extreme. You're not ridiculing and mocking a gay kid. You're not doing these things. You are actually compassionate. You care for people. And you care for one another. And until the hearts of students change, there's not going to be safety in school. But the heart of students will not change without the gospel. It's just you can't have one without the other. You can be good, moral people, but if you're just moral for moral sake, people can do a lot of things with good morality, but it's more than just morals. It's a real heart change.
It appears that we are trying to take care of the symptoms.
Yes.
So we see bullying an issue, so we try to create a policy or a law or something.
About bullying.
Yeah, and so it's like you see something in even this racism that is happening, and you go, we need to have laws for that. Guns, we need to have laws for that. All of these things that start to go, these are all symptoms of the heart issue. You can't make a law to outdo hate. Hate doesn't take care of hate.
No.
And so when you have a message of love and it's restricted, it's denied,
Yeah.
you're not going to change the heart issues.
Nope.
Or the symptoms. You're not getting at the root of things.
And the true source of what love is.
Yeah.
I mean, love is not just saying, oh, maybe just everybody can just do what they want to, whatever you feels right. Like, no, like if I love you and I know that you're doing something destructive, yes, doing drugs might make you happy for a moment, but if I love you, I'm going to say, no, you shouldn't do that. If I truly love you, I'm going to tell you the truth. The truths that are offensive to people in the scriptures are those tough love situations where they don't see it as love. They see it as, oh, this is hatred. This is bigotry. This is the way to live. The God that created us has given us instructions. He knows how we operate. He knows what we should do. And we should speak the truth in love. And it goes both ways, because there's a lot of Christians that do get a lot of press. And they get a lot of press for saying love, but doing things that they call love in a hateful spirit. And, and that's the type of thing that gets promoted. And that's the type of Christianity that people see. And it's controlled by those that don't want Christianity to be a thing that's welcomed in our culture, and especially our school system. So that's what gets promoted, and that's what the stereotype becomes. So that's what we don't want.
You know, the message of the gospel, the hope of Jesus in campuses, the campus, we've talked about it over and over in this podcast, but it is, and George, you know this, it is such a strategic place of influence in society. It's where the overwhelming majority of our population goes through middle school and high school on a school campus, whether public or private, and that's where they're most receptive to the gospel before they graduate. It's where all of society is in one place, and they're spending, we calculate out in middle school and high school, about 9,000 hours, half of their waking life when they're in school. They're on a campus. And so our hope, and I have to bring it up because it's part of who we are, is Claim Your Campus. It's students praying. It's seeing the difference that prayer is making. When you're talking about heart change, that's the only thing that can change a person's life and heart is God, and it's the power of Christ. There's no other way around that. And you're exactly right. The behavior modification thing, it just falls so short, and that's just not going to change our society. And right now, all of our social media feeds and all of our news feeds, if we're watching the news, are filled with the conversation about what can we do to make schools safer. And those can be good conversations. They can definitely divert into some rabbit trails, but I know all of us agree, and our ministry and organization is all about the transformation of people's lives and hearts. And prayer that's the doorway for that to happen. And student-led prayer is the way for that to happen. And that's our hope through Claim Your Campus is imagine a prayer group led by students at every school where you can begin to see the transformation of that campus.
Yeah.
And what God can do.
Absolutely. When God gets taken out of the schools, we see what happens. But I think more and more God is being taken out of the church. And we have this disguise of, we're just loving people. We want people to belong. We want to make people feel comfortable here. But we get people to feel so comfortable that God's not comfortable there. And he's not moving there. So I think that's a result of a spiritually weak and biblically illiterate church generation that we have.
I think we've talked about this. I realized a few years ago, people's approach to their church or worship experience. It's believer focused, like we're here to disciple or we're here for outreach. And I think what's missing in that to me is the God focus.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at the Old Testament, the priests went in to serve. No one was there. They weren't doing it for the believers. They weren't doing it for the world. They were doing it for God. To me, that's the missing element.
Yeah.
If churches and youth groups could say, we are here for God and God alone. This is a birthday party, and we're here to celebrate the birthday person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not here for ourselves.
Yeah.
To me, it's like going to a birthday party and you ignore the person whose birthday it is.
Yeah.
You're just there to hang out.
Yeah, with everybody else. Like the person that's throwing the party is not actually invited there.
Like you said, we've removed God because God in and of itself, the things that God desires for us can offend the world.
And not to spoil the story of the scripture, but Jesus offended a lot of people. And they actually killed him for it.
Alert.
So
Yeah.
it's a good book. You should read it.
Yeah. Should try that. Well, George, thank you. I mean, your passion, your heart, we grateful for your ministry, and we're working on some things together we're excited about, we talked about.
Hey,
So
thank you very
for
much.
being
Hopefully you don't get too many angry emails from
Yeah.
my comments here.
Definitely not from YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Thanks, George.
We've had this long-standing relationship with a school that's really near and dear to our hearts, not in the state where we're recording this in Michigan, but it's an urban public high school. This high school faces a lot of different challenges. 85% of the student body doesn't live with their father. They've been an F-rated academic school for several decades, and in the process of building a relationship with them and some students there, we have seen something really incredible happen that we want you to hear about. It's a story that's worth hearing because it shows the power of what happens when students that are believers decide to make a difference at their school. And today, it's unique because at this public high school, we were able to spend some time with the principal, and he was able to share his perspective on what he has seen from students that, through their faith, have made a difference on their campus. So let's listen in.
Okay, well, my name's Keith Burke. I'm the principal here at Marion High School, and this is my 4th year here. At the beginning when I got here, academically we were doing okay.
When Keith arrived, Marion High School had moved up from an F-rated school to a C-rated school.
About 3 years ago, the CYC group started. Amante and Zoe came and asked if that would be a problem. I said, absolutely not.
The area of Marion and Marion High School is about 70% free and reduced lunch and is extremely high in poverty. One of the highest poverty schools in the state of Indiana. They were also averaging a fight every few days where the students believed fighting was okay. So what Zoe and Amante wanted to focus their prayers on was to see violence decrease and academic excellence increase. And Keith can definitely see the change.
But I can tell you right now, where I see the shift, academics, I think we're on the upswing and doing a great job. Where I see the shift is in the culture. And again, our prayer group had so much to do with that, I believe.
For the first time in decades, Marion High School became an A-rated academic school. Their AP test scores are higher than the national average and higher than the average in the state of Indiana. Last year, the senior class earned over 4,000 credits towards college, saving families a lot of money.
90% of our students have earned at least 3 college credits while in school. So 90% of our school population, and that even goes down to some of our special education students where we're finding ways we can help them succeed, and that makes them feel great. So, we're really, really doing some things I think that are helping our students succeed and become, more productive members of society, which helps us all.
Evident in the data, Keith also noticed a change in the number of fights, as well as the culture of peace had started spreading amongst Marion's students.
And our numbers of fights have gone down dramatically. Again, when students care for each other, great things happen, and they're definitely caring for each other and praying for each other. Again, things don't just change just from policy changes. They don't just change from leadership changes. You have to have students who believe, students who are involved, and believing in the cause is great, but if they believe in the cause and believe in Christ and are willing to ask Christ for help for it, how much better can it get than that? Our students asked for help. Our students asked for his guidance. Our students asked, for him to grant salvation on some of our students, our other students, and to give them peace and to give them an opportunity to be better in school and to be more productive members of our society. So prayer is not accidental, and what comes from prayer is not accidental.
So Claim Your Campus is this movement that's growing. Students are praying, and what's exciting about this is that we're seeing it from people like a public high school principal who are pointing to faith as a reason for specific change on campuses. And my encouragement to you today is working with students, help them understand ways that they can make a difference. And I want to be really specific here for a minute and say to you that Claim Your Campus is something you need to know more about. If you go to the website, claimyourcampus.com, you'll learn more. You can go there and find out how students can get involved. It's so simple. Students just deciding a day and a time every week to meet with their friends and pray for their school. The Claim Your Campus mobile app, search it on any platform that you use. Download it right now and learn more and see how easy it is to use. And if you want more tools in your hands, if you go to the claimyourcampus.com website, look up CYC Connect under the Resources tab, you can learn about how you can introduce something to your students, maybe in your youth group time or at an event, that can mobilize them in one night to begin to pray. Because one of the mantras of Claim Your Campus is that prayer equals change, that when students begin to pray and they're specific, they're equipped, they're passionate, God can begin to move and do something that only He can do on school campuses across America.
There's no doubt that schools face tremendous challenges. We see this in the most recent school shooting. There are tremendous challenges that these students face, but we believe God is moving. And that may be hard to believe right now, but we see it every day. We see it in so many examples. We have heard about the stories, even in most recent episodes with Josh Liggins or Jeff Henderson. God is moving. And as we stated last episode, schools are one of the most, if not the most strategic places to bring about change in society. And in the next episode, we have an announcement that is 8 years in the making. And the fact that we are mentioning this will make the next episode historic. We're not understating that. We've been discussing for months which episode to make this announcement, and it will be our next episode, so you won't want to miss it.
The Thought Factory podcast is brought to you by Never the Same, whose vision is to see new generations transformed in Christ to further the kingdom of God. Learn more at neverthesame.org.